Between 1347 and 1351, a wave of pestilence swept across continents with a ferocity that reshaped civilization. Communities were hollowed out, genealogies erased, and roughly half of Europe perished. Yet, within this unimaginable suffering, a silent, seismic shift in wealth and power was underway. Old structures crumbled, and from the rubble, new empires of influence began to form. It feels wrong to acknowledge that amidst a sea of graves, certain lineages found their path to supremacy paved. But this is the relentless logic of collapse. When a system disintegrates, there are always those ready to rebuild it in their own image. To see who truly prospered, you must look past the death carts and abandoned villages. You must look at what was left behind. The plague didn't just kill the poor. It obliterated bloodlines. It erased landlords. It cleared the board of rival merchants and bankers. And when established wealth suddenly has no owner, a vacuum appears, a vacuum that ambition is destined to fill. In the arithmetic of disaster, loss for millions equals opportunity for a few. Our story starts not with the horror's peak, but with its aftermath. Because the plague's real impact wasn't demographic. It was hierarchical. The scarcity of workers shattered feudal bonds. Lands lay fallow, ownerless. Trade routes went silent. Banking houses failed. And through every single crack, a new class of winners emerged. So who were they? The answer lies in tracking inheritance, consolidation, and cold, calculated opportunism in a world suddenly missing half its people. First, consider the legendary names we associate with the Renaissance's blossoming. Their origins are steeped in this crisis. Look at Florence. As the pestilence ebbed and flowed, the city was a landscape of survivors. Competing banking dynasties were decimated. Into this void stepped a man named Giovanni de' Medici. He was not a titan, but a shrewd financier with perfect timing. He established the Medici Bank in 1397, just after another wave had crippled the financial sector. With giants like the Bardi and Peruzzi families weakened, Giovanni seized their roles, even capturing the immensely lucrative account of the papacy. The plague had eliminated his competition. From this foothold, the Medici would rise to fund masterpieces, install popes, and effectively invent modern banking. You could say, in a whisper, that the Sistine Chapel owes a debt to the plague. But Florence had no monopoly on opportunism. In Milan, the Visconti family didn't just endure the pandemic. They mastered the power vacuum it created. With a fatality rate so high, noble lines frequently ended abruptly. Their lands and titles would revert or be seized. The Viscontis became experts at this grim arithmetic, absorbing the estates of extinct families. Through this strategy of consolidation amidst chaos, Gian Galazzo, Visconti amassed enough power to crown himself the first Duke of Milan. What might have required generations of war was achieved in a single lifetime of demographic luck. Now, cross the channel to England. Here, an entirely new tier of power players emerged, the upwardly mobile gentry. Take the Paston family. They began as modest Norfolk landowners. When neighbors died without heirs, the Pastons acquired their properties at distressed prices or through legal claims. This sudden windfall bought education, court access, and political clout. Their documented rise, captured in the Paston letters, is a textbook case of social climbing via demographic collapse. They were not alone. Families like the de la Poles, the Nevilles, and the Stanleys all expanded their holdings and influence because the plague had thinned the ranks of the aristocracy above them. Crisis doesn't create new rules. It reveals who knows how to play the old ones best. The economic shockwaves radiated outwards, and the pattern held true. Wherever death created emptiness, someone moved in to occupy it. Sometimes it was a merchant cartel, like the Hanseatic League in the Baltic. They turned scarcity into profit, buying cheap grain from the east and selling it at a premium in desperate western cities. They secured monopolies on vital goods like timber and salt, leveraging economic chaos into lasting political power. Other winners were institutions that outlived their members. Monasteries and church orders became some of Europe's largest landowners. Why? When families vanished, they often willed their estates to the church, seeking spiritual insurance. The church, an entity that doesn't die, accumulated territory like a sponge soaking up water. In an age of panic, investment flowed toward the perceived eternal. And let's not forget the banking families of Italy. The Medici are the famous example, but the Strozzi and Pazzi families also rose in the financial crater left by the plague. The pandemic caused widespread loan defaults, finishing off already weakened giants. Second-tier families found themselves without competition, able to buy land for pennies and rebuild banking networks from the ground up. Their success wasn't guaranteed by the plague, but their rivals' destruction was. Yet perhaps the most profound shift was among those history rarely labels winners: the surviving laborers. For the first time in centuries, workers had leverage. With half the population gone, wages soared. Serfs could negotiate freedom or better terms. Laws like England's Statute of Labourers tried to cap wages, but they couldn't override the sheer force of supply and demand. This was a quiet bottom-up redistribution of power, a silver lining in the darkest of clouds. So what's the ultimate lesson of the Black Death's economy? It's a blueprint that repeats. Wealth never evaporates in a crisis. It simply changes ownership. We saw it in 2008, where distressed asset investors thrived. We saw it in the COVID-19 pandemic, where tech billionaires saw their wealth explode while main streets shuttered. The tools evolve, but the mechanism is timeless. Catastrophe accelerates. It rewards those with capital, connections, and the cold readiness to act while others are paralyzed. The plague that nearly ended a continent ultimately midwifed the world that followed. It empowered the Medici to fund the Renaissance. It reconfigured English politics for centuries. It cemented the power of northern merchants and the church. The uncomfortable, clarifying lesson is that disasters are not great equalizers. They are great sorters. They create pockets of immense possibility, and whether that leads to progress or exploitation hinges entirely on who is positioned to step forward. History's patterns are stark. If you don't grasp how fortune behaves when everything breaks, you'll never truly see how influence is forged. If this perspective resonated, please give this video a like. It helps the channel Rich Root Official immensely. For more explorations of history's hidden turning points, subscribe to Rich Root Official.